Okay, let's see if we can go into the download settings in a bit more detail. Firstly, I'd like to go into the fact that there are two different methods to actually measure the throughput. If you go onto the General tab and look down here, there's a method of switching on this thing called use adapter hooks for up and down measurements. Now by default, JDAS uses its own internal method of measuring the throughput of both up and down. But sometimes in some situations there can be a problem on certain computers for various reasons. And also if you use the internal method, then if you're actually downloading something at the time, obviously that can affect the result. However, if you switch the adapter hooks on, make sure you choose your correct adapter here. So switch it on and it will then be measuring the download and the upload throughput from a hook that gathers the data from your network adapters. This is different to the internal method JDAS uses, because if you were actually downloading or uploading something at the time for test, the adapters will give the correct value back as to what you were uploading or downloading, regardless of how many different sources this throughput is coming from. So you could, in theory, run an accurate test whilst you're downloading something if you're using the adapters for the information. Right, back to the download tab. Now you can turn download tests on and off here with this on and off button. You've got two types of download speed measurement. There's two ways of doing it. You can either get a fixed file size and then measure how long it takes to download it and calculate the result from that, or you can measure for a fixed amount of time and monitor the throughput, and then after that fixed amount of time get the value of how much has been throughput and calculate it from that. Now the fixed file size method was the first method I used. It was a few years ago now and it's pretty much outdated, so I'd really advise not using it unless you've got a good reason to want to use it. It's up to you. It still works, but it has its limitations. You're much better off with the bottom method here. Now what you've got, test duration there, that's how long the test run for, and the clipping time there. When the test first starts, the data starts coming through, and the clipping cuts off the first few seconds of it, because there sometimes could be a spike or a dip, or it just cuts the front of the test off. That's what the clipping is. The main test file list has been explained before in the introduction, but basically this holds all of your available test files, so you can add your own and remove them until you get a nice long list that you can possibly choose from. And then once you've got your main list to choose from, you add them to the actual testing list with this drop down here. Now you can add as many as you like, although I wouldn't suggest going too mad. I would keep it around 3 or 4 maybe. If the multi-threading's on, then it's going to download them all at the same time from all the different servers at the same time. This way it will max out your connection. Even if one of the servers is having a bad day, the others should compensate for it easily. This way it's the best I can get it to work for as many people as I possibly can in default mode. If you've unticked the multi-threading and you've got multiple in the list, then it does them one at a time, one after the other. and then chooses the best result from whichever one was the fastest and uses that result. Oh yeah, and before I forget, you've got all these files in the main test file list to possibly be used, and there's a good way to actually test which ones are the best ones for you. This scan entire test file URL list here basically just scans through the entire test file list one at a time using separate settings that you set here. Right, so it's running through, it's doing the 5 meg Think Broadband file. The first two come up with an error because they were so small. Obviously if my test duration is 5 seconds and I'm only downloading a 1.414 megabyte file, that finishes before the 5 seconds over, so that's why the first few might error. Obviously also if the servers are offline then they're going to error as well. But generally after the first 3 or 4 small ones you should start getting some values coming up. And it will go through all of the URLs in the test file list, the main list, and build you up a picture of which ones are good for you at that time. But just because they're good for you at this specific time doesn't mean to say they're going to be good for you 2 hours from now or tomorrow. So you might do this a few times and get a good idea of which ones definitely you should be using. Right, so I've done a few. I haven't gone to the end because it takes quite a while. But when it's finished, basically, ideally you'd just take the top 3 or 4 and just copy them, I don't know, into Notepad or somewhere you can remember them. Exit from here and basically choose those as your actual test files. And that's the idea of the scanner for the URL list anyway. I hope that's explained any questions you may have had on the download settings. Thank you.